Hello everybody, I'm Jeanette and you're visiting the Neals Homestead. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm in the process of spending the week before Thanksgiving getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I'm sharing my process with you. I've got the turkey lined up and there was a video about that yesterday. Today I'm working on making biscuits. Biscuits are going to be the bread that we'll have. Everybody loves biscuits. What I'm going to do is make like 48 is what I'm aiming for biscuits, and I'm going to freeze them ahead of time. I expect them to be flaky and delicious even though they're frozen, and all I'll have to do on Thanksgiving Day is to take them out of the freezer, put them on the pan, and bake them for a little while. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. The recipe I'm going to use is tried and true and really simple. It's called baking powder biscuits. And first off, I'm going to use all-purpose flour, but it's unbleached all-purpose flour, and it's a lower gluten flour. Even though biscuits are a bread, I don't want a high gluten flour to make my biscuits out of. I want a lower gluten so that they'll be flakier. So I'm going with 8 cups of low gluten Pollyanna all-purpose flour. I'm going to be using 1 cup of butter, and I have gone through my butter and cut it up into little cubes. It's still fairly cold. I don't want warm butter. I want my butter to be pretty chilly. I'm going to use 3 cups of milk, 4 tablespoons, which is a lot of baking powder, and 4 teaspoons of salt. So let's get going. First I'm going to put my flour into my bowl. I have this huge bowl because it's going to take a lot of space to work this all out. And then I'm going to go ahead and mix in my other dry ingredients of the baking powder and the salt. I'm going to use a pastry blender to work this up, so with that I will just stir it. And then I'll scatter my butter around over the top and start blending the butter and the flour together. And what we're doing here is just cutting up the butter a little bit more and then coating all that butter with the flour. With this large amount, it's going to take me a few minutes to get this worked up. After I use the pastry blender for a little while, I'm going ahead and sticking my hands in there to make sure I don't have any big globs of butter. I need them to be broke down and mixed in with the flour pretty good. Now I'll take my flour and butter mixture and kind of push it to the middle, and I'm going to make a well in the middle. Now I'm not going to pour all of my milk in at once because I only want enough milk to keep my dough together. I'm going to start working that flour and butter into the milk. When that's all absorbed, I'll make another well in the middle and pour more. I'm still not going to pour all of it. I'm going to leave a little bit of it at the end. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. Flour can be temperamental because the humidity makes a lot of difference in how much water it needs to absorb. When it's dry, it can use more water. But when the humidity's high, it can use less liquid. Right now, it's winter time or fall. We've got the wood stove going and it's fairly dry in our house. At this point, I'll start working it in with my fingers. It's a little bit messy, but it comes off pretty easy. since I have this dry down here, I am going to go ahead and put in the rest of my milk. Get that worked in. The dough is still pretty sticky, but that's okay at this point because I'm going to put it on a floured area, and the flour will keep my hands from sticking into it. I'm going to get washed up and go to the next thing. I have a plastic sheet that's designed for rolling dough, and I've scattered a little bit of flour on it, and I'm going to put all of my dough on here for now, and I'm going to knead it several times just to thoroughly make sure everything's incorporated. Just keep enough flour there so that it doesn't stick to your surface. Now also, I've put a damp towel under this thing because if I don't, it slides around. So I've discovered that if I have the damp towel under there, it stays in place. I'm going to cut this into 3 different pieces so I don't have to work with the whole thing at once. And I'll set 2 aside and work with this one first. So let's get a little bit more flour out here. I'm going to press it down just with my hands first and work toward making a square out of it, or a rectangle, I guess. Probably more a rectangle than a square. And it's not really easy to keep a shape while you're rolling a piece of dough out, but I'm going to try to do it. So I'm going to throw a little bit of flour on the top, not much, but a little, and then I'm going to flour my rolling pin also. I don't want my dough to stick to that. And I'm going to start rolling, trying to maintain the shape. See how it wants to go round? It never wants to stay square. So I have to kind of work it, trying to make it square. And doing this helps quite a bit. So just take your rolling pin up there and force it into squareness. You have to do it over and over. I'm going to roll this out to about 1/2 inch thick. Now I'm going to make layered biscuits. I'm going to make those flaky ones that are really good, and to do that, what I'm going to do is fold my dough. Now I'm going to flour my surface again, just a little bit, just enough to keep it from sticking. And I'm going to roll my dough out again. After I get it rolled out again to 1/2 inch, I'm going to fold this in again, thirds. But it's not wanting to stick, so I'm just going to barely flour it. This time I'm going to turn it over, and I'm just going to roll this out one more time to 1/2 inch thick. Now what I'm doing is making all those layers in there. If you want another layer, you can do this again. What I'm using as a biscuit cutter is a tin can with the top cut off of it. I turned the can opener sideways and cut the top off so it doesn't have that lip on it. And what I'm going to do is dip my can into the flour, and then I will gently but firmly push straight down, lift straight up. Try to get as many biscuits as I can out of this dough. And looking at this makes me think I might be in trouble trying to get this many biscuits out of the dough I have, because it looks like it might not work. Press that down just a little and get one there. So out of that I got 2, 4, 6, 8. That's not a lot. I'm going to freeze my biscuits on cookie sheets, and I put waxed paper on here so that it won't stick down to the pan. I can peel the waxed paper off of them. I've melted some butter. This is what makes biscuits, homemade biscuits, really good, is melted butter. And what I do is just dip that into the butter and then put it onto the pan. I've actually got my butter a little bit hotter than I want. It doesn't matter whether you put your biscuits real close together or space them far apart, because they're not going to be cooked on here. They're not going to spread, so you can put them pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and fill this pan out with some more biscuits. Now I'll take this biscuit dough and we'll make more biscuits out of it. I won't roll it up with this, but I'll probably take all the leftovers and put them together to roll out the last biscuits. I got them all made on the cookie sheet, and I'm going to put them in the freezer, leave them overnight, and then stick around because I'll bake some in the morning and see how they turned out. Well, we made it through another night on the homestead, and I've got my biscuits out of the freezer. I'm going to be putting them in freezer Ziploc bags. Now, one thing that I had a problem with when I was making them is that they aren't all the same thickness. The first ones I did were really thick. Like, they're supposed to be ½ inch thick, and this is more like 5/8 or even 3/4. So I don't know how that's going to go. I think that I probably shouldn't mix the sizes when I'm baking them all at the same time, or at least allow for them to take a little longer to cook. And then I've got some that are extra thin because I was trying to make my dough go a little farther. So what I'm going to do to test it out is actually take one of these thick ones back out of here, and a thin one, and then a middle-sized one, more the size that it's supposed to be. And I'm going to bake those this morning to give them a test. I've got my oven heating up to 350 degrees, and let me get these put away and then get that all ready to pop into the oven. Okay, I've got all of my biscuits bagged up and put into the freezer again. You can see that all three are different thicknesses. It's really hard to roll something out and get the whole thing one thickness. I'm not necessarily so good at that. Normally, whenever you bake biscuits, for one thing, you would cook them on a cookie sheet like this, and you would only bake them for 10 to 12 minutes. But since these are frozen, it's going to take 25 to 30 minutes for them to cook in the oven at 350 degrees. 25 minutes is up, and they are not browned at all, which could have to do with the tall-sided pan I have them in. The bottom is a little brown, but not too much. They're not squishy, any of them. I mean, that one kind of stayed dented in a little bit. I'm going to cook them for another 2 or 3 minutes. At 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and take them out. They're still not browned on top, but I think the reason is because it's not in a cookie sheet. If it was in a cookie sheet, it would be browned on top, but I think they're thoroughly done. So old guy's going to give them a try and see what he thinks.
Well, I'm going to try this thick one first.
Does it seem done?
It appears done.
It's not doughy at all.
No, and it came apart neatly.
You already had it broke apart before I got the camera on, right? It didn't come apart as easily as you made it look like. So what do you think of that one?
It's very good.
Is there Anything wrong? Do that thin one. I'm wondering what it's going to be like.
Well, they came apart pretty good, but I think I probably need to have a few more layers, a little bit thicker.
Yeah, I regret letting any of them be that thin. And I think probably the fact that it's thin is going to make it a little more crusty.
It's not too crusty, it's just good.
Okay. You asked for layered ones, and I did my best to study about it, and
Well,
it seems like it came out layered a little bit.
yeah, they're layered. I believe I like the thicker one.
The thickest one?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it had more layers. And
Well, actually, it doesn't have more layers. They all have the same amount of layers. But it just, I rolled them out thinner.
well, I think I like the thick one the best. But
Okay.
they're all good.
All right, well, we'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving.